Welcome back to G Fun Facts Online. Today, we are going to take a journey back in time, but we are not going to look at the towering giants you might expect. When we talk about the Jurassic period, the mind almost automatically conjures up images of the Earth shaking under the footfalls of colossal sauropods, or the sharp, serrated teeth of a carnivorous theropod. We think of the Titans, but today we are shifting our gaze downward, into the mud, into the ancient, stagnant waters of a world that existed 161 million years ago. We are going to talk about a discovery that happened recently in the windswept, arid expanses of Santa Cruz province in Argentine Patagonia. It is a discovery that has fundamentally rewritten what we know about one of the most resilient groups of animals on our planet, amphibians. We are talking about the discovery of the Goliath Tadpole. To understand the magnitude of this find, we have to set the scene. The year is 2020. It is January, the height of the summer in the Southern Hemisphere. A joint team of paleontologists from Argentina and China are working at a site called Estancia La Matilde. Now, this region is famous among fossil hunters. It is known for its rich deposits from the Middle Jurassic, specifically a time called the Colovian Stage. Today, this place is a dry steppe, sculpted by wind and time. But if you were to stand there 160 million years ago, you would be standing in a lush volcanic landscape. It was warmer then. The ground was dotted with ephemeral ponds, crisscrossed by rivers, and shadowed by the smoke of distant active volcanoes. The team, including researchers from the Natural Sciences Museum in Buenos Aires and the Chinese Academy of Sciences, was primarily there to hunt for dinosaurs. They were looking for the big stuff, the archosaurs that dominated the terrestrial ecosystem. But paleontology is a field where serendipity often plays as big a role as strategy. During a break from the heavy labor of excavating dinosaur bones, the team turned their attention to layers of rock known to contain fossils of an ancient frog species called Notobatrachus degiostoi. This area is practically a mass grave for these frogs. We find hundreds of adults preserved there, likely killed suddenly when ancient ponds dried up or were choked by volcanic ash. It was in one of these frog-bearing layers that a team member picked up a slab of sandstone and saw something peculiar. It was a shadow in the stone. It wasn't a bone. It wasn't a tooth. It was a delicate imprint, and it didn't look like the squat, tailless adult frogs they were used to finding. This shape was elongated. It had a massive head and a distinct, powerful tail. Matthias Mata and Federico Agnolin, researchers on the dig, realized they weren't looking at a dinosaur, and they weren't looking at a frog as we usually know it. They were looking at a tadpole, but not just any tadpole. This was the oldest tadpole ever discovered, and it was a giant. Let's pause for a moment to appreciate why this is headline news. Tadpoles are, biologically speaking, soft bags of water, cartilage, and gel. They don't have the hard, mineralized bones that typically survive the fossilization process to become rock. Finding a fossilized tadpole is statistically nearly impossible. It requires a perfect storm of conditions: rapid burial in fine sediment, a low-energy environment where the water is still enough not to tear the body apart, and an absence of scavengers. The fact that this specimen exists at all is a miracle of preservation. The specimen was rushed back to the laboratory in Buenos Aires, where Mariana Chuliver, an expert in amphibian evolution, began the analysis. What she saw under the microscope was breathtaking. It wasn't just a vague outline. The preservation was exquisite. The fine-grained volcanic ash of the La Matilde Formation had acted like a high-resolution camera plate. Chuliver could see the eyes, distinct dark pigment spots sitting right where they should be. She could see the nerves, faint traces of the cranial wiring that once powered this creature's senses. She could even see the limbs. The tadpole was captured in a state of late metamorphosis, with tiny hind limbs and forelimbs just beginning to develop. This animal died while it was transitioning from a water dweller to a land dweller. But the headline feature, The thing that earned this fossil the nickname Goliath is its size. Modern tadpoles are usually small things, maybe a few centimeters long. This Jurassic larva measured 16 centimeters from its snout to the tip of its tail. That is over 6 inches. To put that in perspective, that is longer than most modern smartphones. It is massive. The adult frog, Notobatrachus deustoi, was also large, but the fact that the larva reached such immense proportions suggests a biological phenomenon known as gigantism. This is fascinating because it solves a major evolutionary puzzle. In the modern world, we have something called the paradox frog in South America. Its tadpoles are huge, sometimes growing larger than the adult frogs themselves, reaching up to 25 centimeters. For a long time, scientists wondered if this strategy, growing massive in the larval stage to stockpile energy, was a modern adaptation. The Goliath tadpole proves that it is not. This survival tactic, hanging out in the water and getting as big as possible before facing the dangers of land, dates back at least 161 million years. Now let's go deeper into the science, because the implications of this fossil go beyond just size. Before this discovery, there was a gap in our understanding of frog evolution. We knew that frogs, or proto-frogs, have been around since the Triassic, about 250 million years ago. But we didn't know if they always started life as tadpoles. It sounds like a strange question, but not all amphibians do this. Some salamanders hatch as miniature adults. Some modern frogs skip the tadpole stage entirely and hatch as tiny froglets. Because we had never found a tadpole fossil older than about 145 million years, some scientists hypothesized that the tadpole stage might have been a later invention, a biological add-on that frogs evolved later to exploit food in the water. The Goliath tadpole destroys that hypothesis. It pushes the record back to 161 million years ago. But more importantly, it shows that the complex anatomy required for being a tadpole was already fully formed. The researchers found the hyobranchial skeleton. This is the cartilaginous structure that supports the gills. In this fossil, that skeleton is remarkably similar to what we see in tadpoles today. It shows that this ancient creature was a filter feeder. It had a gill scaffold used to trap microscopic food particles from the water. This is the smoking gun. It tells us that the biphasic life cycle, the strategy of having two distinct lives, one as an aquatic vegetarian and one as a terrestrial carnivore, was already successful and stable in the Jurassic. The frog did not just stumble upon this method recently, it perfected it at the very dawn of its lineage. Mariana Chuliver, the lead researcher, noted that this shows the dual life strategy has barely changed in 160 million years. Let's try to visualize the world this Goliath tadpole lived in. The anatomy of the fossil gives us clues about its home. The filter feeding mechanism suggests it lived in stagnant or slow-moving freshwater bodies that were rich in algae and plankton. The gigantism implies that these ponds were likely free of large predatory fish. If there were big fish, a 16-centimeter soft-bodied, tasty snack wouldn't last long. So these tadpoles could swim freely, consuming vast amounts of algae, growing larger and larger, perhaps delaying their metamorphosis for seasons at a time to build up fat reserves. Imagine the scene. The La Matilde ecosystem was vibrant and chaotic. You have a landscape dominated by gymnosperms, conifers, cycads, ferns. There are no flowers yet. The world is green and brown. The air is humid. In the distance, volcanoes are smoking. Thundering through the forests are the massive sauropods like Patagosaurus. Stalking the undergrowth is the carnivorous Piatnitskosaurus. In the sky, early pterosaurs are gliding on leathery wings. And there, at the feet of these giants, in the muddy, algae-filled ponds, swims our Goliath tadpole. It is the giant of its own little world. Nearby, the adult frogs, which looked very much like modern toads but with a few primitive features like retained tail muscles, would be hopping along the muddy banks, croaking into the Jurassic night. These frogs and tadpoles were a crucial part of the food web. The tadpoles turned algae into animal protein. The adults ate insects, and both were likely eaten by small dinosaurs, prehistoric crocodiles, and early mammals. They were the energy bridge of the Mesozoic. One of the most profound things about this discovery is what it tells us about resilience. When we look at the history of life on Earth, we see the dinosaurs rise, dominate, and then vanish when the asteroid hits 66 million years ago. But the frogs? They are still here. The Goliath tadpole tells us that their survival strategy, separating the parents and the children into different environments, is a masterstroke. The babies don't compete with the adults for food. The adults don't eat the babies' food. This ecological separation likely helped frogs survive the mass extinction that wiped out the dinosaurs. While the forests died and the ash rained down, the frogs could bury themselves in the mud. Their versatile life stages gave them an edge. If you were to travel back in time and look into that Jurassic pond, the tadpole swimming there would look immediately familiar to you. Despite the hundreds of millions of years, despite the shifting continents and the changing climates, the frog has kept this template: a gelatinous egg, a swimming grazer, a metamorphic miracle, and a hopping hunter. Comparing the Notobatrachus fossil to a modern bullfrog tadpole reveals an uncanny resemblance. It is a design that works. This discovery, published in Nature in October 2024, has energized the paleontological community. It reminds us that micro-paleontology, the search for the small, delicate things, is just as important as hunting for the big bones. Researchers are now going back to museum collections and field sites with fresh eyes. If one tadpole can be preserved this perfectly, are there others? Could we find the eggs? What about the developmental stages of other ancient amphibians? Furthermore, this connects to conservation today. Amphibians are currently the most threatened class of vertebrates on Earth. They are being decimated by habitat loss and disease. Understanding the deep history of their life cycle helps us appreciate exactly what conditions they have needed for millions of years. Clean water, ephemeral ponds, and connectivity between land and water. The fragility of that Jurassic tadpole, preserved in stone, mirrors the fragility of frog populations today. So, the Goliath tadpole of Jurassic Patagonia is more than just a curiosity or a record breaker. It is a bridge across deep time. It connects us to a world 160 million years removed, showing us that amidst the reign of dragons, the humble frog was already perfecting a lifestyle that would outlast them all. For 160 million years, the template has remained. As we marvel at the size and preservation of this ancient giant, we are reminded that sometimes the most significant discoveries in history are not the ones that shake the earth with their footsteps, but the ones that quietly swam through the waters of the past, leaving nothing but a delicate shadow in the stone for us to find. That is the story of the Goliath tadpole, a true giant in the history of life.